Hello, welcome to Jason on Millennial. Staying outside of the movie theater. Just saw The Accountant 2, a sequel to the first Accountant that came out quite a while ago, starring Ben Affleck and John Bernthal. Kind of taking place like 8 years after the first movie. We get another kind of mission that he kind of gets caught in with this Fed agent who's looking for some trafficking kids, and then he asks his brother to help him. And that's how kind of the movie goes. Overall, I was watching it. There's some good moments. There's some really cringy bad moments. It's a combination. As an action movie, it felt like they really didn't have much action in the movie till the very end, and then they kind of threw in a lot of big shootout at the end, and it wasn't just a little bit here and there. There's even some scenes where some action took place, but we don't see actually what happened. We just see the aftermath. So I felt like they missed some opportunities there for an action sequence. John Bernthal is definitely the MVP of this movie. Besides that, it was a decent movie. I'd give it 3 out of 5 stars, a light recommend. I wish there was more action throughout the movie instead of just the very end. And I wish the humor wasn't so cringe at certain moments. There's also this scene where they're in a bar and he's trying to pick up a woman, and there's some dancing. It felt like it had nothing to do with the plot. It just was a waste of time, just to have some fun, I guess. But I would have cut that out and just concentrate on the main plot, the mystery of trying to find these kids anyway. So that's my overall thoughts here, and I'll talk more when I get back home. All right, I'm back home talking about the movie Accountant 2. I just saw it in theater. It was a little windy, so I don't know if you could hear everything I was saying when I was outside. And some people walked by too, so I was a little awkward at moments. But trying to get some of my thoughts that maybe you missed that I talked about already when I was outside. But yeah, The Accountant 2. I'm a big fan of the first Accountant, and the first Accountant kind of took me by surprise. I remember when it came out, I wasn't that crazy about seeing it, and it wasn't until my older sister, actually, I was at her house and she showed me The Accountant. And in fact, I thought there was bad reviews of it, so that's why I was kind of kept away, because I thought, oh, there's kind of bad reviews, whatever. I ended up really liking it. I remember watching it going, wow, this is actually really good. I like the main character, Ben Affleck, is playing kind of what do you call it? Autistic. I said acoustic. Autistic, and he's an accountant, so he's like a genius with numbers and he's kind of savant. He has savant genius level, when it comes to numbers and stuff, and figuring out clues, and he can figure things out through his knowledge, and but also he's really good at fighting. And you have to watch the first movie, of course, to get the whole background, which I think there's actually a very interesting background through all that. Anyways, I thought overall the story was very interesting. The first movie and the action scenes were really good, and there's some good twists in there as well, I guess you can say. Anyway, so coming to this one, this doesn't have that, though. This doesn't have some of the stuff I liked about the first one, which was a bit of a twist of who his brother is, let's say, and his background and everything. And it's interesting, this takes 8 years afterwards, and then they have to explain what happened in the last 8 years. And spoiler, I guess, is John Bernthal plays his brother. They are brothers, but they haven't really been close. Anyways, we find out in this movie. I guess you almost can say Ben Affleck's character is almost like a vigilante or something like that. And he has this I don't know, I can't remember the relationship, but there's this lady that's also a savant, autistic, and there's a bunch of kids, and they live in this neuroscience facility, whatever, and she has a computer that she can do anything, and it's a little ridiculous, but it's a movie, so you go with it. But because her and all these kids are these savant geniuses, they're able to hack into anybody's phone, any camera, and get information. So they kind of become their, they're, if you have Batman, then they're the person in the chair that's giving Batman all the information, using computer or whatever. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but Anyways, you always have that person that's a genius hacker. Anyways, and they have this, and that's actually an interesting aspect. I think they use it quite a bit in the movie, where and actually one of the more interesting scenes is they have to get a picture from a phone, and they go through all the complicated process of how they get it, and it's kind of a cool scene overall. But anyway, so Ben Affleck is like doing this kind of vigilante work while his brother John Berthol is like a contract killer, basically. He gets paid to kill people, and so they come across this Fed aide. Well, actually, J.K. Simmons comes back from the first movie, and he's in some trouble. He's trying to find this family, and that's what he does. He's like retired police detective who's using his retirement to find missing kids and stuff like that. You know, doing really good stuff like that. Anyways, then there's like a hit out on him. And then you meet this one mysterious woman who's like a contract killer as well. And we kind of find the whole backstory behind her as well throughout the movie. I will say I was a little confused about that character because they show some scenes where I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? And then it kind of reveals that it has something to do with this other character. And I'm like, what's going on? It took me a little while to kind of piece it together. I think I kind of understand what happened, but it was a little confusing at times. But anyways, this Fed agent who's like a friend of J.K. Simmons' character, she's trying to look for this family and trying to figure out, you know, who's after him, who's after the J.K. Simmons character, and all this. And so then she kind of comes across the accountant, which is Ben Affleck, because he dealt with J.K. Simmons in the first movie, so there's a connection there. And so she has him help her try to find this family, and then he asks his brother to help him as well, and that's how you get them two together. And definitely the movie is really good when it's John Berthnall and Ben Affleck. Their chemistry is pretty good because they're quite opposites, because Ben Affleck is a super serious, always never smiles, kind of super serious look on his face, and is very logical and is very socially awkward, you know, and stuff like this. While Berthnall's character is, you know, got a lot more character to it. He's you know, he's more, you know, humorous and very colorful language and all this, and you know, and a bit of a wild character. And so the two characters kind of really, you know, are opposites, so they kind of make it interesting throughout the movie. And there's some good scenes between them where they're talking about family and, hey, how come you haven't called me in 8 years, you know, or whatever. And, you know, they kind of establish their relationship as brothers. So there's some good stuff there. I do like that about this movie compared to the first movie, where the first movie, they don't have hardly any scenes together. While in this movie, there's a lot of scenes with them two together. And that definitely was a positive, I think, on this movie. Yeah, as far as I said, I feel like there could have been more action. And like, to me, an action movie, a good action movie, you should have like maybe 3 separate like action sequences, and they kind of build up to that third climatic action sequence, which should be like, yeah, balls to the walls, everybody's shooting at each other. It's a big scene with lots of people, you know, involved. But I think you also need to have it kind of, the action sequences kind of, you know, what's the word? Distributed within the movie, that you're like, all right, we're gonna get a little bit of action here, and maybe just a small action sequence in like a house or a bar or something. I'm just, you know, spitballing here. And then you have some, you know, dialogue scenes and some, you know, what's going on, the plot development, all that. And then you need another action sequence, you know, to further something. And then you can have a little bit more of a, you know, dialogue, whatever. And then another action sequence. This movie, it was like, there's just maybe, there's a little bit of an action. Like, there's one scene where he beats up a couple guys, maybe. And like I said, there's like a scene where they're in a bar, and it's a stupid scene. I think it's probably the worst scene in the movie, one of the worst scenes of the movie. But he's like hitting on a girl, Ben Affleck is, which is weird because doesn't seem like he's, you know, he would be good with women, but yet he hits on this really hot chick in this like cowboy bar, and she likes him, of course, and all this. And then, of course, some guy, you know, hey, you're hitting on my woman, and then they get in a fight. But we don't see the fight at all. All we see is that they beat up these guys, and they run off in a truck. And it's like, why didn't we not see that scene where they beat these guys up? that would have been at least not a great action sequence, but at least it would have been something, instead of nothing, which they gave us. And like I said, we see like another scene where John Berthnall, like he's killed a bunch of people, but we don't see it. We just see a bunch of dead bodies lying around this like hotel room or something. And you're like, okay, that was a cool action sequence that we never got to see. So they did that a lot, but they didn't really show any actual action like I was hoping. I hoping there was more action sequences. And at the very end, I kind of knew this. I was watching. I'm like, oh, they must be holding up for the very end. They kind of do. There's a big shootout, in this one area as they're trying to get all these kids that are trafficked. Anyways, and it was okay. It was an okay scene. It wasn't as great as I was hoping it was going to be, since it was like the only real big action sequence of the movie. I could have had it been a little bit more, I don't know, stylized, I guess, more cooler shots of scenes. It just lots of just shooting around cars and buildings and stuff like that. And like I said, it was okay, but it wasn't like as grand as I was hoping for a movie. I was hoping for more action. And compared to the first one, I thought the action was more interesting and more well done in the first movie. And they had more action sequences throughout the movie instead of just at the very end. So I think it kind of, that really hurts the movie for me total, because as I was watching, I was like, oh, this is really good. I was really enjoying it. And then there's this whole middle part to me that was really kind of like, it's almost like they forgot about the plot and they kind of went in this other direction. And then they kind of went, oh yeah, the plot. Let's get back to the plot of the movie of trying to find this, this trafficked kids and trying to figure out who this person, whatever. And so it kind of lost me a little bit in the middle. And that's where I was kind of like, oh man, like they kind of missed something there, like I said. And yeah, and all that. And it was a little bit confusing, a little bit like I said. There's this mysterious woman, and then they kind of in the middle of the movie, all of a sudden they kind of get to her backstory, which I wasn't that interested in, I guess. But I mean, it was interesting once I found out like who she was. I'm like, oh, okay, so that kind of ties in with what happened at the beginning of the movie. But it was almost too much of a coincidence, I guess, because part of me was like, wait a minute, she's connected? Like, I don't understand how this all worked out so well, the coincidences that happen, it's that kind of thing. So I don't know, it was a little too much, a little bit for me at times. But like I said, they kind of had this interesting like mystery of like, okay, these people are after J.K. Simmons, whatever, and has to deal with this trafficked kid that he's trying to find. And there's this other guy who knows like behind it all, and he's the bad guy, so they need to get to him at some point. And so you're like, okay, I'm kind of into, okay, if they got to find this guy to get information, and then after they get that information, it's one of those movies where you're going to go talk to this guy, get information from him, then you're going to go to this person, get information from them, and as you go on the movie, you're getting more and more information, so you can kind of figure out who's behind it all. So they kind of start that, which I was very invested in, like, okay, who's behind, I know who's behind it, but how are they going to figure it out, and how, and this other mysterious woman, how are they going to, have her also involved, so all that was actually pretty interesting, and it was also very funny at times. I would say Berthnall was definitely, like, to me, the funniest character in the movie, and there's some good moments in there where he definitely had some of the best laugh lines in there, and I laughed out actually quite a bit throughout the movie. There's actually some pretty good humor throughout it, and I guess I won't say exactly what it was, but yeah, I really liked Berthol's great. I love Berthol. Every time I see him in something, he's always like the best thing in it. So anyways, but yeah, then all of a sudden there's this part where the Fed agent, like, it's like, hey, you guys aren't playing by the rules. I'm leaving because, you guys are breaking rules to try to figure out who the bad guy is. And so she kind of leaves. And then at that point, the movie kind of goes off the rails a little bit. We get this, like I said, this really stupid scene where they're at the bar and he's hitting on this girl. And none of that, it takes a big chunk out of the middle part of the movie where it's like, this has nothing to do with the plot. All it is to be kind of funny, I guess. And sometimes they do that in the movie where I feel like they're trying to be funny, but it doesn't really land. And I'm thinking, we could just cut this whole scene out. And I don't know how long the movie was. It felt a little long. I mean, it was over 2 hours. It was at least like 2 hours and 15 minutes, probably, I'm guessing, which isn't like super long. Top of my mind, that's about maybe where it was at. And so it's not the longest, but still, I feel like it could have been maybe cut a little time out of there, the scenes that we don't need, and just concentrate on the plot and the mystery of trying to find these people. Um, yeah, so this whole bar scene. Anyways, and then they go with the Fed agent. They follow her for a little bit as she's like discovering this mysterious woman. And there's kind of something that goes on there, and it kind of gets back on track. But still, there's this whole middle part. I was just like, they're like could have cut a bunch out. A couple other scenes that I thought were just really unnecessary. One of the first scenes of the movie, Ben Affleck's character, I guess, is trying to go on a date, and so he does a speed dating thing, and you see it in the trailer. If you see the trailer, you kind of see, and all these girls are lined up to talk to him because he's cute, I guess. I don't know, but then his personality drives him all away because he's not good talking to people, and yeah, it's a little bit of a chunk out of the first part of the movie. And it really wasn't, it was only necessary to say, oh, he's very smart, I guess. But we already knew that, at least I did. And so it was trying to be humorous, I think, but to me it was very cringe humor. In fact, I kind of closed my eyes during some of that part because I hate that kind of humor. Anyways, and just the idea of dating just scares me as well. But anyways, yeah, so I don't know, that part, like, it's trying to be funny, but it didn't really work for me. There's also the introduction of John Berthnall's character. I don't remember their names, so I'm just using their real names, but they introduce him, and he's talking in a mirror in his underwear. He's like in a hotel room, and for some reason he's standing there in his underwear. I guess so you see he's real cut, I guess, and he's got all these tattoos. But and he's yelling, and he's like doing this whole scene like a almost like a, you know, Robert De Niro in Taxi or something, Taxi Driver or whatever. And he's talking in the mirror, trying to psych himself up for this conversation he's having. That takes on way too long. And then he's on this conversation. It's about a dog. Like, he's trying to purchase a dog, I guess. I didn't quite understand what was going on. But I think it's supposed to be humorous. But the whole time I'm like, this scene is going on way too long. It's not really that funny. It's not really doing anything for the plot. Yeah, so there's like 3 scenes I can think of top of my mind that I feel like they could totally cut out. Had nothing to do with the plot. Wasn't really that funny as they're trying to be. Because there are funny moments within the movie without having to take a big chunk out of the plot to try to be funny. So they had a good movie there, and I just wish they didn't take time to try to force these kind of funny scenes in that didn't work. Anyway, so that's the big negatives for me on the movie. And I wish Anna Kendrick was back. Anna Kendrick was one of my favorite parts of the first movie, and it felt like there was kind of like a chemistry between her and the Ben Affleck character. And they don't even mention her in this. She just, I guess, didn't want to do the sequel. I don't know, Anna Kendrick. And I wish she would have came back. I think she was one of my favorite parts of that first movie, as far as that's concerned. But overall, like I said, it was overall decent enough movie. There's enough, you know, interesting plot, and there's enough comedy in there with a little bit of action that it was like, overall, it was a, you know, okay, entertaining enough time in the theater for me. It's not going to be one of my favorite movies, maybe, but it was definitely not one of the worst. Definitely somewhere in the middle there. And that's why I'm giving it a 3 out of 5, which is a light recommend. I still think it's worth watching. I wouldn't rush out to the theater to watch it necessarily. Definitely one to catch on streaming or something like that. And if you like the first movie, I think you'll like this one. There's enough there that you'll enjoy it, like I did. As well. If you haven't seen the first one, I don't think you'll know what's going on, or you might not enjoy it as much. I still think the first one's quite a bit better. I think just because the whole backstory behind Ben Affleck and John Berthnall's characters is very interesting, how that gets revealed in the first movie. And J.K. Simmons is good in the first movie, and Anna Kendrick. We're missing some of that in this one. And the action sequence, I think, were better. Anyways, as I said before. But anyways, that's my thoughts on The Accountant 2. Feel free to comment if you've seen it. What do you think? Did you like it? Whatever, let me know. And besides that, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for liking it. And thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate y'all. I hope you have a good week.